Melia's heart was not carrying a child of love. She was carrying the proof of her father's madness. To Jeremiah's heart believed the whispers of a desert prophet. He became convinced that only the blood of his own daughter could make the ritual pure. He locked her away like livestock. He condemned her to a nightmare no daughter should ever endure. Every night her cries shook the walls of that place. Every morning, the cult women washed the floors as if pain could be scrubbed away. By the time she reached 6 months pregnant, Amelia no longer begged for mercy. She prayed only for one thing: escape. The Utah sun was cruel and the sandstone cliffs of Monument Valley rose like watchtowers around her. One night, when the guards drank themselves into stupor, she slipped through a broken corral fence. Her dress was torn and filthy. Her swollen belly made every step torture. Bare feet split open on sharp rock. Her breath came in broken sobs. The desert dogs barked in the distance. Somewhere behind her torches flickered in the dark, but she kept running. She ran until her vision turned white. She ran until the world tilted sideways. When she fell, her hands clutched her bellies. If she could shield the unborn child. Her lips parted in a whisper. It hurts. Inside, too. That was when the sound of hooves broke the silence. A horse's shadow loomed above her. Bootsteps pressed into the dry grass. William McGraw was a rancher who had lived 53 years with more ghosts than friends. He had buried his wife a decade ago, and since then spoke more to the land than to people, but nothing in all those years had prepared him for what he saw. That day, a young woman lay collapsed by his fence. Blood stained her thighs. Her hair clung to her tear-soaked face. Her eyes struggled to stay open, but the pain dragged her down. Will dropped to one knee. His weathered hands brushed aside the torn fabric to find the source of her wound, and he froze. On the curve of her belly, a symbol was carved deep into the skin. It was the mark of a knife, the work of someone who believed in madness more than God. The girl groaned again. Her words were broken, but they stabbed deeper than any bullet. It hurts inside, too. Will gathered her into his arms. The desert wind carried only silence, but silence in the west was never to be trusted. Somewhere out there, a father was hunting for his daughter. And when that father came here, how far would he go to take her back? Will carried Amelia into his cabin. The old boards creaked under his boots as he laid her on the only bed he had. She was pale, lips dry, and breathing shallow. For a moment, he thought he might lose her right there. He fetched a bowl of water, cleaned the dirt from her wounds, and wrapped her belly with strips of cloth. The mark on her skin made his stomach twist. He had branded cattle in his time, but never had he seen a man do that to his own child. Amelia stirred in her sleep. Her hand reached out, gripping his wrist, like she was drowning. When her eyes opened, they were filled with fear, but also something else. Hope. She whispered, almost ashamed of the truth spilling out. My father did this. Jeremiah's heart. Will froze. He knew that name. Everyone in Escalante knew it. Jeremiah was a respected ranch owner. Once before he fell under the sway of a preacher who claimed to hear God in the desert wind. Will shook his head. He could not believe a man would do such things to his own blood. But Amelia's voice was steady. He said, my child would be born pure because it is both his seed and his blood. He said the ritual would bring rain back to the valley. Tears stray forced a bitter laugh. Rain. He gave up his soul for a storm that never came. Will sat back in his chair, watching the firelight flicker across her face. This was no ordinary runaway. This was a girl hunted by her own father and carrying a child, cursed by madness. Yet in her eyes, he saw something worth fighting for. A spark A reason to stand tall again after years of silence. Amelia closed her eyes, but her hands still clung to his like she feared the night would swallow her. The cabin grew quiet, the only sound the crackle of firewood would. Will knew the silence would not last, and if Jeremiah truly believed the ritual needed her, then it was only a matter of time before someone came knocking at his door. And when that knock came, would he be ready to stand against it? The night outside was quiet, too quiet. Will sat by the fire, his rifle leaning against the wall, his mind turning over the words Amelia had spoken. Her father was a man he once shook hands with at the cattle market, a man who used to laugh loud and drink harder. Now that same man was hunting his own daughter like she was livestock. Will clenched his jaw. The world had changed, or maybe it had just revealed its uglier side. The wind picked up, carrying with it the sound of a horse. Will stood, his instincts sharp. He moved to the door, eased it open, and saw a lone rider approaching the ranch. The figure, dismounted, walked with purpose, and stopped just short of the cabin porch. His eyes glinted in the moonlight, cold and hungry. Will stepped out, rifle in hand, the barrel steady as stone. The stranger called out in a low voice, "She belongs to us. Hand her over and no blood has to be spilled." Will's grip tightened. Not a chance. The man smirked, as if he had expected resistance. Behind him, the horse stamped and snorted, restless in the dry night air. Will shifted his stance, the firelight from the cabin casting a long shadow behind him. "You ride back to Jeremiah," he said, "and tell him this. If he wants to claim her, he'll have to walk through me first." The man's smirk faded for a moment. Silence hung heavy between them. Then the stranger swung back into the saddle. His last words drifted into the night. "This ain't over." The sound of hooves thundered away across the plain, leaving only dust and the echo of a coming storm. Inside the cabin, Amelia clutched her belly, her face pale. She knew what Will already felt in his bones. This was just the beginning. They would come again, and next time they would not come alone. If you have been drawn into this story and want to know how it ends, make sure you follow along. Subscribe so you do not miss when the fight truly begins. Because what happens next is no longer just about Amelia. It is about a father, a daughter, and a rancher caught in the fire between them. And in the next part, when Jeremiah himself comes knocking with men at his side, the desert will taste blood before the night is done. The night after the stranger rode away, the ranch was wrapped in silence. But silence in the desert never lasted long. Will sat awake, with his rifle across his lap, the fire burning low while Amelia tried to rest. In the next room, he knew it was only a matter of time, and he was right. Just before dawn, the sound of horses thundered across the plain. 3 riders. They stopped at the edge of the ranch, their shapes cut sharp against the rising sun. Will stepped outside, boots crunching the dry ground. The lead rider dismounted. Even before he lifted his head, Will knew who it was. Jeremiah Hart. The man looked older, meaner, his eyes burning with something that was part madness and part grief. He was not alone. 2 men followed, rough looking, guns at their sides. Will raised his rifle, voice steady as stone. "You best turn around." Jeremiah's jaw clenched. "She's mine," he said. "That girl belongs to me." Will shook his head. "She is no one's property." Before another word could be spoken, one of the hired men drew. The crack of gunfire split the morning. Will dropped low, fired back, and the first man tumbled into the dust. "Sir." The second charged forward, but Will's shot caught him in the chest, throwing him off his feet. Smoke hung heavy in the air, and Will staggered as a bullet grazed his shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt, but he kept the rifle aimed square at Jeremiah. The old rancher's breath came ragged. One squeeze of the trigger and it would all be over. Jeremiah froze, eyes wide. For the first time, the fire in his stare flickered. Behind Will, Amelia stumbled onto the porch, her voice breaking. Please do not kill him, he's still my father. Will's finger tightened, then slowly eased off the trigger. The rifle lowered. Jeremiah's face twisted, torn between rage and something else. He looked at his daughter, and for a heartbeat, there was pity, even sorrow. Then his eyes hardened again. Another girl will take your place, he muttered. And with that, he mounted his horse and rode into the horizon. Amelia fell to her knees, tears streaking her face, not sure if she had saved her father or only postponed the curse he carried. Will pressed his hand against his wound, his body shaking, but his resolve unbroken. The desert was quiet again, but in that quiet, a new question rose. If Jeremiah would not stop, how could Amelia and her unborn child ever be safe? The gun's smoke faded, and the desert returned to silence. Will's shoulder burned, but he kept standing. Jeremiah was gone, leaving only dust in his wake. Amelia knelt in the doorway, her tears falling onto the porch boards. For the first time in years, she felt the grip of fear loosen. She had been spared, at least for now. Days turned into weeks. The ranch slowly became more than just a refuge. It became a home. Amelia tended the small garden out back, her swollen belly moving with each careful step. Will repaired the roof, split the firewood, and checked on her with a quiet nod instead of words. They were two broken souls, stitched together by circumstance. Yet, in the quiet rhythm of work and rest, something new began to grow. One night, the cries of new life filled the cabin. Amelia gave birth to a baby girl, small and fragile, but strong enough to let out a sharp cry that echoed through the valley. She named her Hope. Will held the newborn. For a moment, the tiny fingers curling around his calloused hand. A man who thought his best years were behind him suddenly felt something stir inside. It was not just duty, it was love. Amelia smiled through her tears. Inside does not hurt anymore, she whispered, and Will believed her. The scars would never vanish, but healing had begun. This story leaves us with questions that reach beyond the desert. How far should a father go before he is no longer father at all? Can broken people truly find peace when the past still lingers on the horizon? And when life gives us pain so deep it marks us inside, how do we choose hope instead of despair? Amelia and Will found their answer in each other. They built a life from ashes, and maybe that is the lesson for us, that even in the harshest land, with the heaviest burdens, love and courage can still take root. If this story moved you, let it remind you that hope can survive anywhere. And if you want to walk with us through more tales of the Old West, full of pain, justice, and redemption, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because each story carries a piece of history, and each question it leaves behind is one we must answer together. So tell me, if you were in Will's boots, would you have pulled the trigger? Music generated with https://kome.ai